Now to ABC's one-on-one with Attorney General William Barr, with racial unrest gripping the country for weeks, and as the Department of Justice faces criticism that it's become too political. ABC's Pierre Thomas conducted a wide-ranging conversation with Barr on Black Lives Matter, whether there's systemic racism in policing, and if we're in a culture war, as the president said today. Here's ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas with the Attorney General.
What's your view of Black Lives Matter, and are you willing to say Black Lives Matter?
Well, I'd make a distinction between the organization, which I don't agree with. They have a broader agenda. But in terms of the proposition that Black Lives Matter, obviously Black Lives Matter, I think all lives, all human life is sacred. I also think that it's being used now is sort of distorting the debate to some extent, because it's used really to refer exclusively to Black lives that are lost to police misconduct, which have been going down statistically. 5 years ago, there were 40 such incidents. This last year, it was 10. So at least it's a positive trajectory there. But then you compare it to 8,000 homicides in the African-American community. Those are Black lives that matter, too.
You think it's a symbol of hate? The president called it a symbol of hate, Black Lives Matter.
I'd have to see what he said. I don't know what he said. But I also think, it's not just protecting life. It's also Black Lives Matter in the sense of ensuring that African Americans fully participate in the benefits of this society and their lives flourish. And I think it goes beyond just physical safety. And I think that's, as Condi Rice said, the civil rights issue of our time. So I think the Black Lives Matter, has focused on a particular problem, and it is a problem, and it's a problem that at least the trajectory has been improving, and they're ignoring, I think, these broader issues.
Many African Americans, they talk about how they're treated as suspects first and citizens second, that they talk about being pulled over constantly by police. It's happened to me in a circumstance where I didn't feel like it was fair. Does that speak to systemic bias in policing? You said you don't think that exists. Are you changing your mind?
No, well, the word systemic, I'm not sure whether people means it's built into the system, so the system inherently has this, or whether they mean it's widespread issue. I do think that it is a widespread phenomenon that African American males particularly are treated with extra suspicion and maybe not given the benefit of the doubt.
Is that wrong?
Well, I think it is wrong if people are not respected appropriately and given their due.
Is there some value in the notion of defunding police, even though you might not like how that word sounds?
No, because I don't think the money should come out of the police. We've been spending a lot of money, trillions of dollars over the last few decades, on things like education and social programs. Part of it, as you say, is that the police are being called on to do more and more. Deal with mental illness, deal with homelessness, deal with drug addiction, where they don't have the training and the expertise sometimes to deal with it.
So to be clear, you're against defunding police, but you're for enhancing some other projects.
Yes.
Where do you think we are right now in terms of race relations at this moment?
I think before the George Floyd incident, I thought we were in a good place. I thought that economic opportunities were expanding, and the African American community was able to participate more than ever before in those opportunities. I think that this episode in Minneapolis showed that we still have some work to do in addressing the distrust that exists in the African American community toward law enforcement.
Today, the president made some news, and he said that he thinks that we're in a culture war. Do you share that belief? Do you think we're in a culture war?
To me, this doesn't really relate to the race issue. I think there has been a culture war in the United States for a long time, using war in the metaphorical sense. But I don't view that as connected to the race issue. I think it has more to do with things like religion and traditional religious values and things like that.
He was saying things like removing the flags from NASCAR events hurt a lot of people. He, this week, retweeted something where someone was yelling white power. You're down here today, and you're making up community outreach. This kind of rhetoric from the president, is it helpful to what you're trying to do?
I think what he was likely referring to are some of the things that people would feel were, and I'm not talking about the NASCAR thing. From my standpoint, NASCAR was a business decision by NASCAR. But, there's some people who feel that some of our history is being erased. When you take George Washington and start defacing George Washington or Christopher Columbus or others, and, that's upsetting to people. And I would like to see us confront our history in the sense of, not tearing it down, but acknowledging our history and adding to our history.
I see what you're saying on George Washington and Christopher Columbus, but again, coming at this from the African-American perspective of many people, Confederate statues honoring Lee, Jefferson Davis, people like that, epitomize or symbolize oppression, slavery, people being treated like cattle. Are you comfortable with, or do you support Confederate statues being removed from some of these landscapes?
Well, I actually think that the way they've handled it here in South Carolina is the appropriate way to do it. I think these are decisions that should be made through community discussion and appropriately dealt with to reflect the will of the community. But I don't think, mobs should go around tearing down statues. If I were king and making up the names of bases, there's some people that I probably wouldn't honor.
Pierre Thomas joins us now from South Carolina. Pierre, certainly a wide-ranging conversation there on this moment our country is facing. You also asked Barr about some significant headlines, including the president's claims that mail-in voting will lead to fraud. What's the Attorney General's view on that?
Well, he believes that there's real potential that there could be fraud. He pushed on that, but we pushed back and said that we talked to every Secretary of State in the nation that we could find, and none of them thought this was a big issue. Nonetheless, he maintains that it's something that he's concerned about, Lindsay. And
also Trump ally Roger Stone, he's of course set to report to prison next week. What did Barr say to the notion that the president potentially would pardon or commute that sentence before Stone even serves any jail time at all?
Well, in our earlier interview with him a few months ago, he said it was a righteous prosecution. I asked the Attorney General again today if he still felt that way. He said, yes, it was a righteous prosecution and that Stone deserves prison time. But he acknowledged it's going to be the president's call.
All right, Pierre Thomas for us in South Carolina tonight. Thanks so much, Pierre.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.